Welcome back to Pollinator Live, a distance learning adventure. My name is Tamberly Conway, and I work for the U.S. Forest Service as a Conservation Education Coordinator. And I'll be your host for this segment, where we'll be learning about native bees and honeybees. We'll also see a short video about a 16-year-old student who keeps bees in her backyard. Also, Alonso Abogadas, a naturalist at Long Branch Nature Center in Arlington, Virginia, will be introducing us to native bees. Then, Dr. Jeff Pettis from our USDA Bee Research Lab and Tony Burnham, who is the beekeeper here at the Washington Youth Garden, will show us a honeybee hive and share information about colony collapse disorder and also some ways in which we can help the bees. Also, we're going to answer many of your emails at the end of the segment, so buzz in to the email address on your screen and the experts will answer as many questions as they can at the end of each segment. Now, let's start with Alonso. Thank you for being here today, Alonso.
Glad to be here.
Can you share with us the importance of native bees and honeybees?
Well, bees are very, very important. For one, although a lot of different animals can act as pollinators, none are better adapted or better evolved to be better pollinators. They got fuzzy little hairs on their bodies, they carry pollen better, and not only do they need pollen and nectar, but they need to feed it to their young, so they're constantly looking for flowers. And on top of that, they can memorize things, so they'll know which flowers they got rewarded with. They'll go visit those same kinds of flowers, which means they don't waste time, and it also means that the pollen gets to the right plant and the plants don't waste time. So since also about 72% of our agricultural crop species are from animal pollinated crops, we really do need bees around.
Because 1 out of every 3 bites of food we eat comes from a pollinator.
Yeah, from different species.
Yeah. Now, can you share with us the difference between wasps and bees?
Yeah. Well, wasps sometimes give bees a bad rap, at least some of them do. And while we do have bees, and bees tend to be thick-bodied, fuzzy things that feed their babies both pollen and nectar, wasps have a thin, that wasp waist, and they tend to be less hairy. And even though they do nectar at flowers, they also bring insects that they sting to feed to their young. So they can act as pollinators, but are not as good as they are. Now, yellow jackets in particular, this time of year, they come visit all sorts of different things like picnic tables. They're the ones that give the bees the bad rap because they can get a little aggressive. If you kick over their nests, they'll come out and sting. And so since people can't tell the difference, the bee gets the bad reputation for the wasp.
Well, I understand that you're an expert in native bees and that you also raise them at your nature center in Virginia. Well, there's a bee now.
Okay.
All right.
Well, I wouldn't call myself an expert, but I do know how important bees are, and so I do value them and try to learn a little bit about them. And again, what most people learn about bees is really about the European honeybee, which was introduced into the USA back in 1622 down in Jamestown, Virginia. And it does have a queen laying eggs, lots of workers that collect pollen nectar that then make honey so they can live over when there's no flowers around. And that's what most people know about bees.
And how about the native bees then? What are the differences there?
Well, about 20,000 types of bees there are on the whole world, about 4,000 here in North America. The vast majority of those are native. And they're quite different from the social honeybee. Most of them are solitary, which means it's a single mom, and she lives in her own home. She's the queen, she's the worker, she's everything. And so she basically lives by herself and is not in a big group like all the other bees are.
Sounds a lot like people. Now, I know that you're going to be looking at also identifying some of these different bees.
Yes, and with 4,000 kinds, it's very difficult to know them all. But there's a few groups you can kind of tell apart. For one, the bumblebees, which are social and have hives for about a year at a time, they're medium-sized to large. They got big fuzzy bodies on them, so they're kind of easy to tell apart. Then you've got the much larger carpenter bees, which are solitary. They got a shiny abdomen to them. They're another kind easy to tell apart. Then you've got the shiny, metallic-looking sweater halictid bees, and those are pretty small and easy to tell apart. And the final group of people might notice are the mason bees. What they do is they use mud to find holes and then make little rooms or cells in there, and that's another kind of easy bee, I guess, to kind of tell apart.
You know, and Alonso, I know that many folks in our audience are probably afraid of bees or other buzzing insects. And actually, I used to be a little bit afraid of those too, but you really helped me to overcome that fear. And can you tell us some of those stinging facts and fears?
Yeah, well, it's true. Now, bees, pretty much bees can sting, and at least the female bees can, because a stinger is a modified ovipositor, an egg layer. So boys don't lay eggs, they can't sting. And the native bees, they can sting more than once, another difference from honeybees, but they don't want to sting, and a big reason for that is that they're solitary. They don't have the hive mentality. It's not that I don't lay eggs, I got to protect my hive, my nest, no matter what. For them, if she dies defending her nest, then nobody's going to take care of the young and she's not going to lay any more eggs, so they don't want to sting. They're incredibly passive and docile. And although bees can sting, they're not likely to do that. We can actually do a little experiment that might help us with that. We don't want to harass bees in any ways, because that's when they might sting. But just to show you how peaceful they are, what we might be able to do is actually pet a bumblebee, just to show you that they're pretty peaceful. And we do have some bumblebees right over here. So, Tamberly, if you'd like, just reach over and pet one, and just notice how peaceful these things really are. See if they hold still for you long enough.
Oh, wow, look at that.
And again, they don't even notice you're there.
And it's got huge pollen baskets on its hind legs.
She's doing her job.
Can I pet this one too?
There you go, an even friendlier bee.
Yeah.
So you don't want to bother bees, but they really are peaceful things. They don't really want to bother people.
No, they don't. Thank you so much, bee. All right. And so, how can we help native bees? What would be some ways that we might be able to do that?
Well, there's lots of neat ways we can help with bees. Most of them have to do with agricultural practices. For one, the way that we garden or raise crops, whenever we dig up the soil, especially if it's acres and acres of places that we till, since 70% of the native bees nest underground, we destroy a lot of those nests. So we don't want to do that. Not only that, but when you have huge fields of a monoculture, one single crop that just blooms for a short period of time, the bees have nothing else to eat during the rest of the year. Or even worse, they may not like that one kind of flower anyways and not visit it. What may end up happening is there's not enough little edges and places like that for them to nest. So we have to be careful about how we do that. Another thing would be the use of pesticides. I mean, when we start spraying to kill pests, we sometimes accidentally get the pollinators as well, so we have to be careful about that. Then there's some very simple ways that we can look at right here close at home. For example, we can put up bee shelters for them. About 30% of the bees nest in little tubes and cavities, and you can either buy some ready-made deals, or you can take a piece of wood and drill into them in different size holes for different size bees. Or, as these guys are doing right over here, you can build some bee bundles. You can actually get a nice little piece of bamboo, cut it just above the node, so you got one hollow end and you got one solid end. Put all the open ends together, put it into something, and you got yourself a little place where the bees can nest. The mason bees will come over here, build off little walls where inside there'll be a little basket of pollen and nectar, and those things are going to be where the eggs will be laid and where the babies will be laid. So you can do your own part to really help bees.
And it's great to see our students and Miss Manning and Miss McAllister helping out. And the bee too. I think the bee enjoys that you're creating a habitat.
And it's great to see all our bees that came by to visit us as well.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, Alonso, for being here today to share the importance of native bees and some of the ways that we can help, because that's very important. And it's really true that they're so important to have healthy ecosystems, right?
Absolutely. We do need the bees, and it's not just the honeybees. We also need all the other kinds of bees as well. So we can all do our part, and we hope that we all do.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate being allowed to be here. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. And now we'll introduce Dr. Jeff Pettis and Miss Tony Burnham, and Dr. Pettis is the director of the Bee Research Lab of the USDA Bee Research Lab facility here in Washington, D.C. And Tony is the Washington Youth Garden beekeeper. And she's also donated some of the hives here at the Washington Youth Garden. So we thank you both for being here today, and also our students from Center City School. So Dr. Pettis, how did you get interested in bees?
I started out as a biologist, then a little more specialization in studying insects, entomology, But once I took a honeybee course in college, I was hooked.
All
That was
right.
it. And like Tony, I think many of us, once you're exposed to the fascinating world of bees, their biology, what we can do with them, et cetera, you become hooked. And I've done it for 25 years now, mostly some beekeeping and bee research. So yeah.
Well, it looks like you have lots of really interesting things to show us today. So what are some of the things you'll be sharing with us?
Well, we're going to start by just talking a little bit about how humans and bees have interacted, a little bit of history.
Okay.
Then we'll transition, we'll talk about bee biology, some of the fascinating things about their social life. And then we'll conclude with a little bit about colony collapse disorder and also a bigger issue of pollinator decline. So we'll have three different parts, if you will. The first thing is about how humans have associated with bees. We go way back. We go way back in time. There are cave paintings in Spain where they show humans robbing hives for honey and wax. And that was, our association was kind of built on wax and honey. These two products of the hive, if you will, were the reasons humans became associated with bees. So beeswax, think about candle making. Also honey, you think about back when we were a long time ago hunting and gathering. If you ran across a hive, it was a great resource. You could get honey and wax from one resource. We kind of transitioned from hunting and gathering to trying to manage them a bit more. And as we did that, we began to understand their biology a bit more. But in reality, we neglected the pollination service that they do, which is actually the most important thing. But so our association with bees really began back when we were robbing them, and then transitioned into where we think we know how to manage them. And that is beginning to understand their biology and the services that they do.
So we're working with them now.
We're working with them a bit now. And honeybees in particular, their importance lately has grown in agriculture. As we grow larger and larger field sizes and crops, we need a mobile pollinator. So honeybees are just that. The other native bees that you hear about, often they're solitary and they're not mobile. So honeybees are good generalists. They don't specialize on one particular type of plant, and they're also mobile. Also, a single hive may have up to 40,000 individuals. So that's a big workforce. And again, the mobility in the workforce, they really come into play in agricultural pollination. For the biology part, we think of a hive of 40,000 individuals. There's only one queen in there. There's a number of drones, the males, maybe up to 2,000 in the summer, but they get kicked out in the fall. They're couch potatoes. They don't do a whole lot. But the queen and the workers are doing all the work. The queen in there is an egg laying machine. She'll lay up to 2,000 eggs a day.
My goodness.
So she's just really the heart of the hive. But in the hive that you see here is only about a tenth the size of a normal hive. This is a small hive compared to a normal 40,000 hive that we'd manage for pollination. What I want to show you is these are the two hive products, but what we do as beekeepers is we give them a frame. Beekeepers give them a frame, like this wooden frame. The bees begin to eat nectar from the flowers, and they begin to secrete wax, and they start to build a piece of comb like that. And so you go from something like that, which is pure beeswax, to something like this. And
Quite
this
a construction.
Yeah, they're great engineers. They build it without any blueprint. You come up with this nice cell size. They use those cells for everything. They raise the young in there, the queens lay eggs, and then they have specialized areas where they store the honey, and they also store pollen in there. But this is what humans have done, again, harvesting some wax and harvesting the honey. So what I'd like to do now is just take an opportunity to taste the honey. And all
Here, I'll take that so you can taste some honey too.
What we do, the bees bring in nectar from the flowers, and it has high moisture content. They store it, they begin to evaporate the moisture out, and once that's down to a low moisture content, they seal it over with wax. It can last forever. And what we have to do is we have to break that seal. And you see the honey come out, and then we can taste that honey.
You can do it too,
Try
David.
Try it, David. Tony, yeah. Tony, get in there.
That's good.
It's good stuff. Also, honey is a very fascinating food in that it requires no refrigeration. The high sugar content, the high sugar content, you don't have to refrigerate it. It's a naturally stable at room temperature. So again, honey and beeswax have been the primary things that we've used bees for, but the pollination realm has really come into as agriculture got larger and larger. the importance of pollinators has become more and more important. One other thing about just the hive itself as a superorganism, you've got 40,000 individuals and a queen and some drones. There's a lot of communication that goes on in the hive. There's a lot of communication that goes on in the hive. And so the beekeeper, because this communication, sometimes we excite them or get them excited. We use a trick that we've known for thousands of years to manage the hives. And that trick is with smoke. We use smoke. If a bee gets alarmed and comes out and stings the beekeeper.
Want to hold this?
So if the beekeeper is stung, what happens is the stinger goes in, and then there's an alarm pheromone, a perfume that's given off. And what that says is, this is an intruder. And other sisters come and attack that spot. So what you really want to do is you want to get rid of that odor. And we do that with smoke. So it's just, it's again, in the cave paintings in Spain, they showed people using smoke for thousands of years. And so what Tony is doing is lighting the smoker. We're pretending I've just been stung.
And then how do you remove the stinger?
The stinger with your fingernail or some flat with scraping thing. If you actually take and try to grab it, you're injecting more venom.
Ooh,
so never grab it. Always scrape the stinger out. Now, Tony, I've just been stung. Please, yeah. Oh, calm down. Yeah.
First things first, right?
The smoke. Well, the smoke does a couple of things. The smoke masks that alarm pheromone. The other thing it does, in nature, the reason bees become calm is that if we smoke this hive, they actually go to the honey and they start drinking a lot of honey. We say engorge. They engorge on honey. They're really full and they're real lethargic, and so they don't sting as much. What we think that does in nature is that engorgement is a defense mechanism. If they smell a wildfire, they're going to have to abandon the hive. So smelling smoke, they engorge and they become docile. So just a few of the things about bee biology. So just quick transition into colony collapse disorder, something that's been in the news of late. Colony collapse disorder is a phenomenon that happens where beehives depopulate. The bees die away from the hive. It's something that's happening in North America, but actually a greater concern is worldwide pollinators are in decline. Birds, bats, bees, butterflies, I think of them the 4 Bs. A lot of different pollinators are declining. So if we understand those mechanisms, maybe we can help the honeybees as well as the other pollinators that are out there.
So one of the things that we can do is plant to create like corridors or pathways.
The more diversity we have in the landscape, whether locally or in farm fields and everything else, the better you're going to have pollinator diversity and abundance. So, yeah.
Native plants, would that be helpful?
Native plants are great. Also just a diversity of plants.
Diversity
of plants,
okay.
and protecting that habitat through less disruption.
Excellent. Yeah. Okay.
Great.
And do we have any time for a waggle dance? No. Okay. Well, thank y'all so much for being here and for sharing the true importance of honeybees and just pollinators in general.
Pollinators in general,
And we know how important that is.
Right.
So thank you for sharing the hive with us as well, and just the importance of the interesting life of bees.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
Thanks,
all right.
Tamberly.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right. Well, we must be motivated to keep bees. It's not an impossible task. Here's a video of Allison Fritz, who's a 16-year-old beekeeper who keeps bees in her backyard here in Washington, D.C. And she's been doing that for 3 years. She's recognized as the youngest beekeeper in D.C. And she's also been invited to the White House to talk with other students about beekeeping. So let me take a moment to remind you to buzz in with your questions, and we'll answer some of those at the end. Now let's watch that video of Allison.
Hey there, I'm Allison Fritz. I'm 16 years old and I'm a beekeeper. Let's take a look at my hive. I've always loved playing with bees, and my dad taught me to pet bumblebees. I've been keeping bees since I was 13 years old when we learned about beekeeping in my 8th grade pollination class. When we learned about the plight of the bees and colony collapse disorder, that they were in trouble, I was interested in helping them and learning more about the way they function and what they do for us. I contacted my local beekeepers association. They suggested to me ways that I could become a beekeeper because of my interest. And so I took a class there. Since then, I've been keeping these bees. Now let's take a look at the equipment I use. This is a bee brush. This is what I'll use to sweep the bees off any comb where I want to look at things. My smoker, which is what you use every time so that the bees don't get angry with you. They eat their honey instead of stinging. These are the hive tools. You should always have at least 2 of them with you. And these are what you use to pry the frames apart. This is a capping scratcher. This is what I use when I want to look at egg cells and want to open up any coverings to the cells of especially larvae and young bees. I'll show you a frame. This has pollen on it, and this is a comb. People can wear any type of gloves. Experienced beekeepers often don't wear gloves at all. But what I do is I wear 2 layers of latex gloves, which allows me to move my fingers around without getting stung too much. Let's get suited up. I check on my bees every 8 to 11 days, so usually I'll do this on the weekends. If I'm doing a big inspection, I'll look for the queen. Otherwise, I'll check on their storage of nectar and pollen, and it depends on the season. And you're always looking for diseases. Those are a few things I do when I check the beehives. Okay, so now let's walk over and check on this hive. It's a lot of bees, isn't it? This is covered in honey, and you can actually see on the bottom there's a queen cell, so we want to be really careful because that means that they're not happy with the queen they have right now, so they're trying to make another one. Keeping bees is a really fun, worthwhile, and important thing to do. And while it is some work, it's most definitely worth it. And most of all, once you've done all the work, you get to eat the honey.
Wow, that was really inspiring. And Allison has actually inspired me. My husband and I just purchased 2 of the hives, so we're going to begin beekeeping soon. Also, Allison is now in China studying the challenges that bees and people are facing out there. So she's on a wonderful path to find out how she can help bees and people. Now, that was a fabulous segment, and it's time to answer some questions about bees. So remember to continue to buzz in and send in your emails to the address on your screen at any time during the day. And first of all, we have Andrea. Thank you so much. And this is a question about honeybees for Dr. Pettis. And this is from Blake in Stafford, Virginia. So what are killer bees?
Wow. What are killer bees? Killer bees are bees with a bit of an attitude. They're actually the same species that we have of our European honeybee. They're subspecies coming from Africa. They're really just a bit more aggressive. They defend their hive a little more readily, but they pollinate, they make honey. But for the beekeeper especially, they're a little bit of an undesirable because of their behavior.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Deja. Now, this will be for Alonso. And this is from the students of Miss Corley's class at Satori School in Galveston Island, Texas. Now the question is, do different species of bees understand each other's dances that they use to tell where to go for pollen? Or
Well,
actually, it's both of you guys.
That's a honeybee question,
Oh,
actually.
okay, we're going back to
I
Dr.
think we should
Pettis.
break
Yeah, no, that's fine. Actually, it's funny, the waggle dance and things that bees use to communicate the distance. There are dialects that certain races of bees speak one dialect, and the other races of bees speak a different dialect. So if one group does a waggle dance, then in fact it may misdirect another race of bees. So there's a little bit of a language issue, just like a dialect, like Louisiana versus New York or something.
Yeah,
and
we do
so
have
this
different
waggle dance that we're seeing here, it does communicate distance and direction and the intensity of the reward that's out there. And so bees have a dialect. They do, but they can understand, but there'll be a bit of misdirection. So it's not, they do understand, but they don't, it's not perfect.
Is it how strong they waggle?
It's how vigorous they waggle, is the distance, the direction that they do dance on the comb tells the direction and stuff. So yeah, it's a fascinating. There was a Nobel Prize won for the person Carl von Frisch who discovered the dance language. Yep.
Excellent. That is very interesting how different animals do communicate. And let's see, this one is from Miss Sward's class at Ranch Creek Elementary in Colorado Springs, Colorado. And Katie wants to know, why do bees have stripes?
Well, I can take care of that one.
All right.
Stripes are actually a warning color. What happens is most people know when they see a bee what a bee is. But it's not just bees that have stripes. We've seen the yellow jackets. There's a lot of things that copy bees. But again, to most animals, when they see the little stripe pattern, they know, hey, watch out. I can't sting you if you bother me.
Warning, warning, yellow warning, right? Okay. All right, and we have time maybe for one more question. All right, thank you, Deja. All right, this is from Mrs. Lawrenson's third grade class at Connoquesening Valley Elementary in Pennsylvania. Do bees ever get sick? How did they get sick? Asks Maddie Y. We've been talking about that.
Solitary bees do come down with diseases, and also honeybees are, there's so much going on in a hive. There's bacterial and fungal diseases that they get. So yes, they can get sick, and but we as beekeepers, we can recognize those signs and sometimes help them to overcome these sicknesses. So
now I would imagine pesticides can make them sick as well.
Pesticides, poor nutrition, you know, not having a good diet, that can all affect bee health. Yeah.
So just like we need a varied diet, they need
parasites too. And
parasitic mites and the like. Yeah.
All right, well, we thank all of our experts for being here today, and also all of the people for sending in those questions. And we're going to continue to buzz in with those questions throughout the day. So thank you for sharing your information about native bees and honeybees. Now, remember, we'll answer as many questions as we can at the end of the program. Teachers, if you will, go to the web address on your screen, and you can fill out that online evaluation because your feedback is extremely important to us so we can improve future programs. Now, as a gift for filling out the survey, we will plant one milkweed plant for monarch butterflies and for each survey we receive, and that will be planted in a local school or a people's garden. You'll also receive a pollinator and a woodsy owl bookmark. But in addition, we'll enter your name into a bucket raffle where 10 teachers will be randomly selected to win a woodsy owl composting bucket and woodsy owl educational materials and many other incredible prizes from the Forest Service and other partners. Also, we received 96 surveys last year, our last program in May, so let's beat that one. Now, please stay with us and buzz back in 15 minutes to learn about bats, butterflies, flies, and other insect pollinators, because you don't want to miss out on that. Miss Carol Randall, who is our Forest Service entomologist, has been out here in the Arboretum searching for insects with some of our student scientists, and we'll be here to show you what they've discovered. Now, during the break, you're going to enjoy a video of an Aztec cultural group called Chicawak, and they combine art, culture, and nature to help people understand how those things link together. And they'll be back with us in Austin in April, where they will be performing the butterfly dance, La Danza de la Mariposa. And this is for the monarch butterflies and their migration between Mexico, the U.S., and Canada. So we hope you enjoy that. We'll see you back in 15 minutes. This is Tamberly, buzzing out for Pollinator Live.